Hello and welcome. If you're here, it's probably because you have been inspired in some form or fashion to contribute something to the world. And maybe that inspiration is coming from inside in your quiet moments, or maybe it's coming from outside of you, from mentors who see what's ahead for you, or friends who have already been inspired by what you contribute to their lives. Regardless of where it's coming from, the question is, what is it? Is it clear enough for you to really jump in and start creating, or is there a little bit more work to do? So, this is why I created this 2 day workshop called Your Sacred Contribution, because I know, especially after 2020, that a lot of people are looking out at the world and thinking, we have to do something differently. If only they would. If they would just, right? Like if you're having those thoughts, that means that you have something to contribute. If you're supporting people through grief processes that they're going through or big, ideas rupturing around the way that the world works and the information that they're getting, if you're helping them to kind of walk that journey, then you're already contributing to the world. And this inspiration to take it to the next level is is an opportunity for you to step into more of you and more of possibly what you're here to do. So, I want to share a little bit about this event with you because it might be the thing that really supports you in taking that next step and taking your contribution to the world. So, over the last few years, I've been working with messengers. I've been working with messengers for more than 10 years now. And along the way, I've realized that there's some really important core conversations that have to happen. So, we've been doing these little workshops to help people get clear around what is the message, what's the story, what's the contribution, and who's the audience, like who really do you want to get this information or to hear this story or to receive this solution. And then as we work through that process and we get that level of clarity, then the conversation is around structure. How do we structure this so that it makes sense? How do we structure it so that it's powerful? How do we communicate it so that our audience is riveted? And then at that point, once we've done that, then we have to have conversations around what does it look like to actually maybe publish the book or produce the actual contribution, the product, or maybe it's about monetizing and offering a bunch of services or programs or consulting packages. And so we have that conversation around publishing and monetizing. And then the last conversation, and maybe the most important conversation, has to do with the fact that any creative process is really a spiritual endeavor, whether you think it is at the beginning or not. That little inspiration that's coming from inside you or outside of you is like a calling to be more you, to contribute more of you, to express more of you. And anytime we are challenged to be more, give more, do more, we tend to come face to face with every story and limiting belief and fear that we have about why we can't do that or why we shouldn't do that or all the terrible things that might happen if we pursue this, or we might even have things go sideways or upside down, I call it, every time we get started working on the contribution. So why does that happen? And for me, after 10 years of working with messengers, I figured some of this out, and I realized like there's some basic stories that come up for all of us as we look at stepping into that new version of ourselves. And so, how do we work through that so that we can actually contribute and not just have this beautiful thing that we know is incredible, that we know would change a life or the world, and yet hold on to it because we haven't sorted out all of the internal stuff that would allow us to take a stage or to finish publishing that book or to ask for a conversation with a change maker who could implement a solution. So, this 2 day event is really the opportunity to work through all of those conversations in just 2 days and to do it with allies who are on the same journey of, what is it that I want to offer? How do I offer it? What do I do with it when it's complete? And how do I take care of myself through this process and make sure that I don't sacrifice anything that's important to me along the way? And so I want to share with you a little bit about how the event is going to work because you do have options. So, the first part of this workshop is called Change the World with Your Sacred Message Without Sacrificing Your Sanity or Your Soul. And so, this part of the workshop is really focused on getting clear on what is your contribution, who is it for, and why does it matter? Why does it matter to you personally? Why does it matter to you professionally? And why does it matter to you even spiritually? Like, what is it calling forth in you that's important? And so that brings up the conversation of potentially sacrificing things as we step into trying to change the world. And so we have that conversation around, what is likely to come up and how do we create structures in our life that keep us safe through this process, that keep us from making all those little decisions and ignoring all of those little nudges that we get, that we actually need to pay attention to even other things in our lives that need our attention and our healing as we are creating our contribution. So that's the first kind of chapter of the workshop. The second one, now that we have that clarity, the second one is about looking at how do we structure this? What are the ways that we can um, make this memorable? And I talked about the two roles that we have to play in order to really engage an audience's head, heart, and hands. That means, how do we connect with them emotionally, help their minds to wrap around the concepts and lessons that we're trying to deliver and actually inspire and motivate them to take action with their hands or their feet. And so we're looking at like what are the ways to do that? And one of the most important components of that part of the workshop is looking at how do you create that for your audience while also being 100% true to you and bringing as much of you as is available to this experience. Because the more of you that you bring, the better and the more fun it's going to be for everybody. So that's the second part. The third part is looking at the truth. I call it the down and dirty truth about publishing and monetizing your contribution. So, a lot of people get really focused on the creative process and then they get towards the end of the creative process and they realize like I don't know what to do with this manuscript or with this signature talk or all of these different things that we're trying to get into the world. And so that the focus of that workshop is I do spend a lot of time talking about publishing and producing books because there are a lot of myths out there floating around that people are picking up about how much money you can make on a book and how, what that process looks like and what it really takes to market and sell the book. And so we have those conversations and explore some of those myths and get you into the driver's seat of that experience, not just of publishing, but also of monetizing. Because again, I call it the messenger matrix. It's full of a bunch of formulas that have worked and do work for a lot of people. But just because they're working for others doesn't mean that they're designed for us. And I find that sometimes when we try to put those formulas on top of us or fit ourselves into them, it um, it kind of destroys our creativity, the joy of our work. It has us doing things that we don't really want to do. And so we'll be talking about that and helping you to develop a true to you plan, meaning a plan for producing your book, if that's what you're going to do, producing your product, your contribution to the world, and monetizing it in a way that makes you feel really, really good about what you're offering and how you're offering it. And not just that, but makes you feel really good about how you are spending your time. So, just a quick example of this, right? Like a dozen years ago, all the rage was these membership communities because you can charge people this small amount of money and grow your list and have a lot of people in there and make so much money on a recurring revenue. And it's a really good game plan for a lot of people. And there's also a lot that goes into a membership community that people don't know when they hear about it. And then they get into the process and they realize, like, actually, I don't want to create all of this content. I really want to work one on one with people, or I want to do events. And so they spend a lot of time um, creating something that doesn't really give them joy. And, when you create something that doesn't give you joy, it's kind of hard for the energy of joy to come through for the people that you're offering it to. So for me, it's about looking for the win, win, win. The win for you, the win for your brand, the win for your bottom line, and the win for the people who are receiving what you're offering to the world. And so this last part of this workshop is what I call FU to breakthrough. And the reason why I call it this is because inevitably, when we get into the creative process, we start to find these little things that trigger us, right? Something that we don't have the skill to accomplish. Like, I'm trying to write a book, but I don't know how to use tenses properly, or I'm editing myself to death, or I want to speak on stage, but I haven't used my voice in so long, or I need to get this message out, but I I don't really want to be like front and center and make this all about me. And so, what's interesting is as we move toward offering our sacred contribution to the world, the feedback that we get is from us first. Where are the places where we are afraid to expose this story, or speak this truth, or use our voice, or deal with people not liking us? And so we explore all of that in this workshop. And we also explore a new framework that I've been refining over the last few years called From Character to Co-author. And that really is a really powerful story healing framework that's helping a lot of people to shift their stories more quickly. I call it crafting a better story loop. So, those story loops that we're on, like every time I sit down to work on this project, I get a headache. Every time I sit down to work on this project, my partner freaks out and acts not like themselves. Every time I sit down, this happens, right? And even if you're not conscious that those are the things that are happening every time you sit down, your nervous system, your unconscious mind is reading the patterns and keeping you from doing the thing that you want to do because you haven't figured out that that thing is connected to this pain. And so, how do we resolve this so that you can move forward and put your contribution into the world? And so that's really the scope of these 2 days, the content that we're delivering. As far as how it's going to be delivered, we're gonna spend a few hours on each section, in workshop fashion. So if any of you have seen me work before or been in my rooms before, it's all experiential. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of like, now it's your turn. Let's hop into a breakout room and here's some prompts. And so you'll be working with your new allies to refine your answers and get even clearer and come up with better ideas. And so you'll have a few hours for that. And then for the people who sign up for this 2-day event, you'll actually get the opportunity to do a deeper dive, a Q&A, some laser coaching with me, and ask those questions that come up during the workshop. So you'll get a lot of answers, and then you might have a question or two about, like, well, in my case, what do you think about this? Or I'm still stuck here. And so we'll spend an extra hour together kind of working through the details and beginning to integrate it and put it on paper so that you have it when you're done with this workshop. And so that the work gets done while we are together. That's really, really important to me. I do not want you to feel like you're going to come and get a list of to-dos of things that you got to do when you leave the workshop. This is a workshop. We work together and we get answers together and we refine together. And so you'll have the opportunity to have the workshop and then do like a Q&A session. I'm working on getting some of my messengers to show up and support and share their stories where they apply, because some of them have just really, really incredible stories that are incredibly supportive to people who are in the middle of those particular phases of the journey. And so we'll be doing that. So these 2 days are packed full of opportunities for learning, for growth, for refinement of your contribution, for actually developing a plan that will support you beyond the workshop. And I'm really excited to offer it. And I also know that some of you may think, like, I'm not sure, 2 days, that might be too much, or I just want to start with the change the world with your sacred message, or I just really want to look at the publishing and monetizing portion. So you're free to choose one of those. Just want you to know that when you do that, you'll only be receiving the workshop portion. So the Q&A piece is reserved for the people who are in your sacred contribution. So, yes, I really am pushing for everyone to join the sacred contribution because it's so much more value. Working through all those conversations together at one time is going to set you up for success in 2021. And you'll have more time with your allies and with a guide who can support you and answer specific questions. And if you do the math, you'll actually save more than $300 by jumping into these 2 days rather than paying for all of these workshops separately over any course of time. So that's your sacred contribution. That's the offering for the 2 day workshop, the opportunity to take one or more separately if you'd like. And regardless of whether you take this invitation from me or not, I hope that you will move forward with the invitation that you're getting from inside or from outside of you to really take that next step in figuring out what is your contribution, where's the best place to put it in the world, and how can you do it in a way that is true to you and that lights you up and that brings in more money and that really, most importantly, impacts the people that you want to serve the most. So, what you'll see at the bottom of this page is a link to my calendar. If you're interested in the Your Sacred Contribution workshop, please get on my calendar so we can have a conversation and make sure this is the right fit for you. And I hope to see you there.